Welcome to the Gentlewoman Boss podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Horlbogen. I'm on a mission to foster civility, respect, and integrity in the boardroom and beyond, and I invite you to join me on my quest. Welcome back, everyone, to the Gentlewoman Boss podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Horlbogen. And as many of you know, October is National Bullying Prevention Month. And this week, October 18 through 24, is Freedom From Workplace Bullies Week here in the U.S. So because it is a month of special activity and awareness, I lined up two amazing podcast guests for you. And the other day, on Monday, I shared part one of my interview with Linda Crockett, who is a specialist in workplace bullying and harassment and treatment for it. So that part one of that aired on Monday, and I'll be sharing the second part of the interview on Friday. But today's guest, I have someone very special here today for you as well. Her name is Janice Gilligan White, and Janice is the founder of The Empowered Employee, a blog site for targets of workplace abuse that aims to spread awareness, supply the resources available to stay healthy and safe in the workplace, and also to give hope to those who are suffering from the abuse. Janice is affiliated with the Workplace Bullying Institute and End Workplace Abuse Now. She is the co-founder of Redefine, a premier group that hosts summits, workshops, and retreats for targets of workplace abuse. Janice serves as the director of fundraising for the National Workplace Bullying Coalition and leads a Dignity Together peer support group. In addition, she co-hosts Two Targets Talk, a weekly chat aimed at breaking the shame and silence surrounding workplace abuse. So I remember so clearly the day that I found Janice. I was on LinkedIn and I had searched hashtag workplace bullying or something and came across one of her LinkedIn posts, and that brought me to her website, The Empowered Employee, and to her blog. So, there's always like a landing page with whatever is the chosen blog post that the author wants. And I just started reading that, like not in any order, just whatever was on the first page. And I literally sat at my computer and sobbed. For 2 hours, I read her blog and I cried and sobbed and cried my way through it, because it was like this catharsis of acknowledgement and validation for how I was feeling, because I was still very early on, and I was just bleeding. I was bleeding over what had happened to me getting fired. And I mean, our families, they want to help. They want to be there for us. They're trying to understand, but they just, if you haven't been through it, you just don't get it. That's just the bottom line. That's the fact. And they try to help you, and they try to support you, and they try to listen to you, but really they just kind of want their life back before this crazy thing happened to you, right? So reading Janice's blog, I felt heard for the first time. I felt like my feelings were valid, and that the pain I was going through was not overreacting or a pity party. It's just literally, it is psychologically devastating to go through. And I immediately reached out to her on LinkedIn, and we connected, and we have been just in each other's tribe ever since. And I really encourage you strongly to visit her blog, follow her on social media, look her up on LinkedIn, and you will really, really, really have an amazing advocate and mentor and help that you will find so amazing to have in your tribe. So I can't wait to bring this podcast episode to you today. I'm going to introduce her in just a second, so sit tight. Janice, I'm so excited to have you on the Gentlewoman Boss podcast. Thank you so much for making time to be here today. How are you?
I'm really good. And thank you so much for having me. I'm a huge fan of the work and everything that you're doing. So it's a really big honor to be here today. Thank you.
Well, right back at you. And I'm sorry about the power outage the other night. We had originally scheduled Wednesday night to do this, right? And we had lost our power because of a big storm. So Janice was gracious enough to reschedule with me. And
Of
she's
course. And
been,
I'm so glad everything was all right.
yeah,
Yeah,
we're
those storms
fine.
are
That's fine.
crazy
It's like
that
a monthly thing around here. So
night.
anyway, Janet, I'm just going to tell that Janice is the founder of the company called The Empowered Employee. And I thought we could start off today's episode, Janice, with you telling us a little bit about what led you to founding your company, a little bit of your experience, and also how you came up with that great name for your
Yeah,
company.
sure. So in 2017, I lost my career to workplace abuse. I was in the aviation industry for 16 years. And I had no idea what happened to me or what had just happened. Suddenly, my world had completely fallen apart. I had lost everything that I loved. And about a month later, I found the term workplace bullying, and I realized that that was exactly what happened to me. And actually, my symptoms, what was happening to me, got even worse after. I started having a lot of physical symptoms, some PTSD. And so I really sought out some help. And while that was happening, I was feeling this sense of social responsibility that people have to know that workplace bullying exists and what they can do about it. So I met Sophie Henshaw. She's a doctor out of Australia, actually. I didn't even know anyone in the US yet that could help. So I searched all over the internet. I found her. She's an amazing workplace bullying advocate. And we started working together. And we started working on a blog. I was trying to think, what else am I going to do with my life? And so she was like, well, name something else you were ever interested in. And I have to be honest, it was so difficult to even think of anything because I had planned on being in aviation for the rest of my life. So I said, well, I used to write in college, and I always thought that people that had a blog was cool. And she's like, well, let's just try. It'll be a good distraction for you. So again, that sense of social responsibility, I wanted to let people know what was happening. So we started the Empowered Employee. And I came up with the name because, you know, I always told her I had the heart of an employee. I didn't want to do my own thing. I didn't want to own my own business. I loved working for an organization. I loved the sense of family and just everything about it, especially finding the airline that I did. It had a lot of great values, and it was a wonderful experience to work for someone. But at the same time, I felt like that was my downfall, right? That I was an employee. And so if people are employees, which, you know, how 150 million people are in the US, how can they be empowered instead of how disempowered I had felt? So that's how I started. I really wanted to give the resources available, things that they can do if they find that themselves in that situation, or how to come out of it. So that's how it started.
That's incredible. You know, I've lost count of how many people that have been targets of bullying that turn it into a way to help others. That, like you said, that social responsibility kicks in. And that timeline is different for everyone, right? Because everyone's story is different, everyone's healing is different. But I think it's a way too, like it kind of gives you some of your power back too, right? Like you
Well, that's
kind of,
exactly what it does. Yeah, it's threefold. It's a sense of helping others and a sense of empowerment, like you said, and then also it's just a way to heal as well. So it's a really powerful tool getting involved to make a difference. Yeah.
yeah. I remember clearly the day I found your blog. Had recently been fired, and I was just spiraling. And I sat here at my desk. Well, I have it on the monitor over here, sobbing, reading your posts,
Mm-hmm.
reading your experience, but your helpful words of healing. Like I just bawled. I bawled. It was so beautiful. Well, it was horrible that I had to go look for it. But the point is, you were there for me to find. And I think that's a big difference now, that there is a lot of advocacy work in this topic. It's not really a field. Well, maybe it'll be someday, but like there's a lot more available for resources now, thanks to people like you that were willing to share your story, look into the numbers, look into the statistics, and try to become a resource pool for people. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
beautiful thing of the internet. We can access things we couldn't, years ago. And speaking of statistics, I know you have a lot of you've done a lot of research in that way. Can you share with our listeners, like, some people I talk to look at me like I have two heads when I say, oh, I was a target of workplace bullying. But then there's other people that as soon as you start talking, they're like, oh, I get it. I'm living it right now. But what are the actual statistics, like, either domestically here in the US or even internationally, that you've found?
I've really focused on, I'm a part of the Workplace Bullying Institute,
Hmm.
and a lot of my healing process was studying. So that's really where I got most of my stats. And they do a national survey. Their most recent one was 2017, although they're doing another one right now that'll be coming out. So most of the stats are going to come from that. But it shows that, and when I give these stats, I want to reframe it a little bit for all of us today, since we're talking about recovery, because I think that's going to be really helpful. So, 60 million Americans are affected by workplace abuse. 20%, though, have or are experiencing it right now. And so, what that really told me, what the message that it gave me, was that I was not alone. And it's such an important message, especially if you're hit with this out of the blue and you had no idea it existed, like we didn't, right? To find out that you're not alone is really one of the most powerful tools to start to heal. It is also really researched and really understood. So, I mean, you can read things that are going to tell you exactly what happened to you, why, what it looked like, how you responded, and all of those things are going to normalize this experience for people because it feels very abnormal. And it is abnormal, but it normalizes it as you begin to learn about it. 78% of targets end up losing their original job, the job that they loved. So again, we're not alone. A lot of that is from a position of, people are in a position of power that are bullying you. 40% of targets show really serious health consequences. So PTSD, stress, not being able to sleep, cardiovascular issues, all kinds of issues, suicide ideation. We have to make sure that we mention that. Those all come from the amount of stress that people are under when they experience workplace abuse. Again, you're not alone. These symptoms are understood. They're normal that they're happening to you. And, you can find out what to do about those. There's a lot of help. And just the last piece, so we don't go on and on stats, although I have a million, it's really important. 80% of harassment and bullying is not illegal. And that's really important for targets to understand, because we get caught up in this fight, right, to make things right. And when you're in that situation, or even after, to try to rectify what happened to you. And what we realize, which is a painful realization, but an important one, is, there needs to be changes to laws. These things that they do to us are not illegal. And most workers don't realize the lack of rights that they have.
Yeah, that's I've done a lot of reading about that too and educating myself, and we fall into the unprotected class because we
Sure.
aren't of a certain race, we aren't maybe of a certain religion, we aren't, our skin color isn't a certain color. We are sort of like the lost group of people that aren't protected, because if we are sexually harassed, that's illegal, right? And there
Mhm.
can be, like, there are certain things the law attempts to protect you from. But in our case, where we're just, heartfelt, whole-souled employees, like you said, you were an employee. You didn't want to be an entrepreneur. You didn't want to be an advocate. You loved being an employee, worked
Right.
hard, gave it your all. We'd fall into that unprotected class. And I think that's like what you're saying, why legislation has to happen. Something
Right.
has to happen.
And anyone can fall into that status. I mean, no matter what your sex is, race is, if you can't prove that discrimination was there, then you have no case. So I know with my case specifically, there was a way to kind of make it fit into one of those really tiny boxes, maybe, and then you would maybe have a chance. But then it negates all those other things that happen to you where they aren't able to pinpoint it straight to discrimination. So it's very difficult for targets to realize that. And we're at a big disadvantage.
Yeah, it's like because you, by trying to find that loophole per se to get protection, you're sort of dismissing all the other stuff that we know flat outright. And the other thing, I was having a conversation with someone recently. Um, a lot of times the perpetrators will target someone because they're not, like, say the EEOC will not consider it a protected class. Like, they do their homework and they'll know, like, this person, right, is not, like, it's just because they are that manipulative or twisted or whatever you want to call it. So but I think you said a wonderful positive thing, that the more people you can talk to that have been through it, it does lessen that feeling, that horrible feeling of being alone and misunderstood, because it's hard.
Absolutely.
it's hard for our families even sometimes. Like I have friends who are like, oh, you should be so glad you're out of work and you're home. Well, that's like not what this is about, right? Like, I don't know. Like it's almost like, so I should be glad I'm on funeral leave because a loved one died. Like that doesn't make up for the loss. So it's, we talked about that a little too the other day. Finding support in strange places sometimes, right? Do you want to share some of how that was for your journey?
Yeah, definitely. What you're saying is so true. One of the things that's so difficult is that people have not experienced workplace abuse because it's not as well known yet. I mean, I'm certainly hoping that it will be, that organizations will have to start training on it when laws are passed. But until then, we're kind of left where it's still a very misunderstood abuse. So you do, from your family and from your friends that don't understand what's happening, they have a very hard time giving you the support that you need. And it's going to feel very much like they don't understand. Like one of my friends told me, well, just leave if you don't like how they're treating you. Okay, well, you're asking me to leave a 16-year career that I love, that I did absolutely nothing wrong, that I'm not going to be able to go back into. So just to leave because is not a comforting answer, right? So finding support right now in the midst of maybe people not understanding it as much, going to places that can support you is so important. And there are just so many of them. When I started looking, like I said, I really couldn't find anybody to talk to. I had to find somebody from Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I've been doing this long enough and I've kind of made all these contacts, there are tons and tons of resources in the US that you can find support right now, and build some fabulous friendships too, by the way, which is a lovely aftermath of workplace abuse. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I said earlier how everyone's process is different, right? So it's like with a well, when we originally talked, we said we agreed that it's like a death when this happens to you. If you're wrongfully terminated or fired or forced out, whatever the dynamics of it is. And you said it's multiple deaths because for every relationship severed through your workplace with your colleagues, maybe with your vendors, clients, customers, your contacts, your network. It's like people don't understand that. It's not just the paycheck that went away, it's a lot. And
Oh, and it's even so much more than that, right? It's our belief systems. It's our belief in ourself. It's the way that we saw the world. It's the way that we operate in the world. It's so many things that we
yeah,
lose. And like you said, that multiple death, but all at the exact same time. So it's
right.
just it's a difficult thing. Mm-hmm.
And that process, like when we have a literal death in the family, even within under your own roof, there can be, well, we're a family of three, we could all process that differently, even though we live so connected and we're so related, right? Everyone has their own way of processing things, so we don't want to compare our journey to someone else's. Like, and if anyone's listening right now and you're in the throes of this at your position right now in your company, like, don't compare yourself to someone that this happened to 5 years ago and they've written a book and they've done this and that. It's a huge process to go through, and you can get through it, right? You can get through it and you will get through it. But I think the comparison thing can be um, self-defeating. Like, we're
Yeah,
not
it's a
here.
double-edged sword for sure. So you never want to compare because, yes, as you said, all of us go through it completely different. But there's such a human element to this abuse and the experience afterwards that when we reach out and we talk about our experiences, to find those connections, even if it's a few of them, changes everything. And there's always going to be an element that we can connect on once you've gone through this, because it is such a human experience.
Yeah, it's so true. And I know for myself, I found a great network on LinkedIn, which is how I found, well, I do think I came across you on LinkedIn and started to follow you, and then clicked on your website, which took me to your blog, which is where the bawling session happened, but in a good way. It was a good cry. But LinkedIn is a great network too. Like, you can just do a hashtag search end workplace abuse. You're going to find, number one, tons of content on the topic.
Yes.
Forbes articles, articles on Medium, Thrive, all these, huge publications. And you're going to find people on LinkedIn that have either been through it or are coaches for getting through it, mentors. It's well worth it. If you're not on LinkedIn right now, get yourself on there. beef up your game and just do some keyword searches and start building your support network, because that's I know that was a game changer for me. And it
Yeah, me
also
too.
sort of,
Absolutely.
it gives you it helps the shame to go away, because who wants to tell people they get fired, right? That's another, I mean, it's like you feel like you did something wrong, even if you didn't, which 99.9% of the times a bully target didn't do anything wrong. So
Right.
me seeing all those people reading their content, finding people like you, is huge. And it's, you kind of build your own tribe. It's a new
Right.
tribe, and a lot of ways way better, because there's no politics in this, right?
Right.
If you're a survivor, nobody wants to push you down. Nobody wants to hurt you more. Nobody's threatened by you. It's like, we know what that's like. We don't want any part of that anymore. Well, I don't anyway. I'm just, and I think I
No,
speak
right.
for.
I mean, the research shows, right, that targets are the most ethical, hardworking, honest. Their value systems are high. So these are the people that when you start connecting with them, that you get to restore faith in humanity again, that you get to see that there's goodness in the world again. Because for a long time after this abuse, it was hard for me to see anyone as good and that the world was good. I mean, everything was just terrible and awful, and it was dangerous and scary, right? It really affects our sense of safety. So to connect with other targets, you're connecting with wonderful human beings, and it's a healing, wonderful experience. It takes a while to do it, right? And that's okay. You can silently stalk for a while, reach out a couple times, but like really, I highly recommend, and just like you said, to connect, because it's a safe place to be with people that have experienced this.
Right. And like you said, our trust is very strongly affected by being a workplace bully target. And you put those walls up, and it's
Yeah.
scary sometimes to open yourself up. But I know too, you guys, you host with Deb. Well, actually, let me digress. The National Workplace Bullying Association. Tell us a little bit about that and your work with it. I know you went and had classes and are certified and so forth. So tell us about that organization and some of the leaders in the field that you're part of.
Sure. So the Workplace Bullying Institute is Dr. Gary Namey, and he's out of California. And that's where I got my certification. So I took a class with him, and he has wonderful, by the way, the Workplace Bullying Institute has so many great resources on their website. They also have online classes that you can take as well. But I went through the certification process with him. And then I met Deb Falzoy, who does Dignity Together. And we started Redefine Together, which is a group that hosts retreats and summits. And right now we're doing a healing speaker series, but Deb is like a powerhouse in helping targets recover and also fighting for legislation. And the National Workplace Bullying Coalition, I'm the director for fundraising with them. Deb got me involved with that. And again, it's just a wonderful organization that really fights for tougher laws for employees. And then, like you said, my wonderful Robin Barnett, who we host Two Targets Talk Together, which is just a YouTube channel where two targets are chatting about everything under the sun about our experience. And it's we try to make it light. It's such a difficult conversation. So we try to have a few laughs and just connect. So, I mean, there's just so many great ways to get connected, and so many different things that are out there. And I feel like I'm involved with all of them, but they're all wonderful and such a great part of my life. So
Yeah, I know your Two Targets Talk is really fun to watch on YouTube. I enjoy it. And what I love too is episodes are sort of like brief clips, like 10 to 15 minutes. So I'll put it on while I'm driving somewhere or walking, and you always make me laugh. And it is a great show. So you're going to find that on YouTube, everyone. Two Targets Talk. So it is, I've heard it called different things online, but International Workplace Bullying Prevention Month. I mean, what is the actual, I've heard it different terms for it. But that's
in the U.S., in the U.S., Pacers started it. They're a bullying prevention center in 2006, and they called it the National Bullying Prevention Month. So that's the official title that it started. And there's other big organizations. Stomp Out does it. They kind of do a cool thing where every single week they have a different topic, a different challenge for people. And then, of course, Dr. Gary Namey, they have theirs as well, which is the week of the 18th. So a lot of companies doing some awesome stuff this month.
So that's a week that week starts is officially
that's on
week.
The 18th, and they call that the Freedom from Workplace Bullies Week.
Okay.
So Yeah, that's the one that's specifically workplace bullying. The other ones, they've started to integrate it, of course, but the other ones started for, kids, but they've expanded too. Yeah.
Right. And that's something I do want to kind of pick up on a little bit, that it's a kind of like a twofold mission, because we're adults and we've experienced this in the workplace and been targeted. And now, when you're an adult, people don't necessarily throw with their fists. They have other ways of verbally, emotionally, exclusion, segregation. They find other ways than using their fists to do their bullying, right?
Right.
Which is not any less painful. Sometimes it's more, because there's no physical outer lying signs. But I think my daughter is a freshman in college, so I don't only want to do this for other women or people experiencing bullying in the workplace, but I also think it's important for our children coming up into the workforce, that they don't have to, my daughter knows a lot about, she saw it, what happened to me. I don't want her to have to fear going into her career with this sort of in the back burner of her mind, that I don't want to go through what mom went through, so I feel like it's for me now, and it's for you now, and all adults, but it's also protecting the young people that come after us into the workforce. And hopefully by that time, there will be some laws, or accountability by these employers and boards to protect their staff from the abuse. So
yeah, absolutely. And listen, it's not a bad idea. I've thought of this a lot, like when the kids are graduating from high school or college, that they take a quick course online by Dr. Gary and Amy, or Deb has some too. And they're not long, they're 2.5 hours, but to give them a little bit of an insight into what can happen. And again, it's not to scare them, but we want people to be informed that this abuse has a name. But the biggest thing is to recognize it, and to recognize it early, because if you can recognize it early, you have so much better of a chance of changing the outcome, or maybe not changing the outcome, but knowing what to do and saving your health and your career by acting early. So it's really important that people know that it's in existence, and it's a danger in the workplace. They need to know.
yeah. Would you think that there are more people speaking out now, like in the masses, like, is if I like in corporate America, are you seeing more? I know, like on a celebrity level, we've seen a lot. I mean, people spoke out on the Ellen Show, the National Recording Academy. Deborah Dugan spoke out. There's been, big wig names, but just in mainstream corporate America, do you see a turn with that, where employees are getting fed up, would you say, and saying no, not acceptable?
I don't think it's getting big enough yet, but I've been super excited this year to see it making it into the social media realm, because that's really when you start to see change, no matter kind of what platform you're on. Once it starts getting out there, people start realizing it and demanding more. I haven't seen too much on the organizational place yet. I know the place I used to work at, this was very, very interesting. A year and a half after I left, I got to see their respectful workplace training, and they actually had a page that mentioned workplace bullying. I almost fell over.
Wow.
So that was pretty amazing to see. So maybe a little bit, but it's going to be tough for organizations. They feel like it gives them more liability. So unfortunately, probably until there's a law passed, it's going to be difficult to get it in there. Although, for the organizations that are ready to lead the nation and to do the right thing, hopefully some of them are doing it. And I'm sorry, because if I'm not sure of some that are, and I'm sure some are, it'd be wonderful to see more of it though.
Yeah, I think with everything with the pandemic and a lot more remote working going on, and, depending where the organization is at and how organized they were, some things are probably, even if they had a good initiative going, may fall by the wayside a little just due to the circumstances. Or they could take this time where things are a little slower, to put something together. And like you said, there's tons of resources available for organizations to access to courses they can have, their employees, their staff there. And I think a lot of times it's upper management, like that. It's a management issue, because if bullying's happening, it's not just the perpetrator and the target that know it ever. I'm sorry. And many times upper management knows, and they're either looking the other way, foo-fooing it, whatever. So I feel like it should be really part of management training, to be aware, and also to be held accountable if they don't take action, which brings HR into it too. So it's an interesting uphill climb, but We're getting there.
Well, and one more thing to really say with the organizations is, they think maybe it's more of a liability, but it's more of a liability not to. I mean, there's so much stats on how much it costs an organization to continue to allow bullying to take place in their organization, the turnover, the replacement costs, the loss of engagement, morale. It costs them so much more than if they would just deal with the bully right off the bat and deal with it early. So hopefully they're going to be just as educated as the rest of the U.S. workforce on that there needs to be a change.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the goal. That is the goal. So Janice, before we wrap up, I do have a question I'd like to ask all of my podcast guests. And that is, out of all of the qualities that a gentlewoman or a gentleman would display, which one is most important to you to emulate and why?
Okay, so the most important one, and the only one that you can't fake or train for, is that you have to be a leader that cares. That you're caring. Yeah. So I don't know. My entire career, that's how I led my teams, by caring for them, and it made the biggest difference. That's what we need more of.
That's amazing. And that's you're right. You can't fake that. You can't fake that. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
Okay. Where can people find you, Janice, if they want to connect with you, follow you, that kind of thing? Let us know where they can find you out there.
Sure. Well, I'm on Facebook at The Empowered Employee. I'm on Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn. And also, just if you want to visit the website, it's at www.theempoweredemployee.com.
Awesome. And your email's there if someone wants to contact you.
Yeah, they can reach me on any of those sites at all. And I please reach out to me. It means so much to me every single time that I hear from somebody and I can help someone.
And I can vouch for her. She's amazing. She's a love, and she's gentle and thoughtful and patient and transparent, but always positive. She's
ditto.
So she's the people you want in your tribe. All right, Janice, thank you so much for taking the time today. And I will put all your info in the notes on the podcast. And everyone, you can listen on, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast now. And then I also upload the video version of it to YouTube too, if you want to watch instead of just listen. So we will be right back. Thanks, Janice.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Gentlewoman Boss podcast. Don't forget to download my show so you can listen whenever and wherever you'd like. And if you're enjoying the show, please take a second and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps with ratings and distribution. Thank you so much. As always, if you'd like to share your story, or if you have a question you'd like answered or on an upcoming episode of the show, you can visit my website or send me a DM on any of my social media platforms. Find and follow me at gentlewomanboss. If you prefer to watch podcasts rather than just listen to the audio version, my episodes are uploaded on my YouTube channel in video format as well. Click subscribe, and when new episodes drop, they'll show up in your feed. Super easy. So until next time, remember, always choose to be the gentlewoman or gentleman in the room. And I'll see you soon for the next episode of the Gentlewoman Boss podcast.